Hello guys, it's Chummaster here to another part of the Reimagining Beyblade Burst series. Already, this time we have part 4 for the GT stuff. GT is by far the weirdest season. It was just really strange overall. I feel like a lot of things just didn't make sense about it. And because of that, this is going to be kind of weirdly done because, well, generally I have 1 to 2 sections per video. There's kind of the parts where it's sort of fixing the base, and then there's the second part, which I didn't introduce to last episode, but that was sort of the brand new original ideas. Which, both of these will still be in here. The first part is going to be fixes, but then the fourth and final part will be kind of the original creations. There's going to be 2 parts in between that this time because, again, GT is very weird, and you kind of need more sections. The second thing will kind of just be a couple layers that never got proper stock combos, and the third thing in this video is going to be the prize base, because they didn't make them new evolutions or motifs, it was just new parts on old motifs, which never made sense to me. So there's not actually as many fixes in this episode, but there's just a lot of other stuff going on. And yeah, it's a very weird, this is going to be a very weird part, but it's kind of the last part of the more normal stuff, because after this episode, parts 5 and 6 are going to be quite extensive, so this is kind of it for the smaller scale stuff, I guess. But anyway, going to go ahead and get into the actual fixes now. Alright, first up, we actually have a very simple one, and this is Valkyrie. I don't really like Valkyrie that much, and to be honest, GT just is not my favorite season, but I'm not going to go over every reason to why I don't like the system or anything, but how do I make this bay actually functional? Because I feel like Savior Valkyrie was just really bad and underwhelming as a Valkyrie, and the parts are fine, I'm going to keep them, Blitz and Power. My problems come with 2 things. First is the lock. I'm not going over competitive stuff in these videos, but man, the lock is just so bad on this thing, and I think it needs to be fixed. So fix the lock. But also, Slash as a base was very underwhelming as an attack type. So I think that there should be some metal added onto the wings. I think they should do some thin pieces of metal, kind of around these like vent-like pieces here. Maybe just kind of on these main parts before it kind of curves downwards. So just on the main part here where the vent is, and that's really all you need to do for the 3 wings. That's it. That's all for Valkyrie. It's not that complicated of a change. It's literally just a little bit of metal on it, just to make it a better attack type and a better lock. And I think, while it's still not my favorite Valkyrie, I think that this serves its purpose as a GT Valkyrie. Alright, next up, another very simple change. Wizard Fafnir. Also, not my favorite Fafnir, but I'll let it chill as is pretty much. I think it's like fine enough, but basically, okay, this thing, I don't like to talk about colors very much in these videos, but this Fafnir chip just looks atrocious. I have to just say, make the orange clear, it'd look way better. Just, it bothers me too much to not mention that. Outside of that, though, the main thing with Wizard Fafnir is, again, fix the lock. This thing had a really bad lock, and Wizard Fafnir gets a really bad rep for this, unfortunately. Everyone thinks it's, like, terrible, but really it could have been much better, it's just that the lock didn't work properly. So, as long as the lock's fixed, this bay actually is pretty decent and works fine enough. Alright, next up we have Lord Spriggan. The layer on this thing is fine, even if I don't like the design very much. I think everything here works. You have a lot of gimmicks going on. But there is a big problem with this thing. The underneath. I'm sorry, but Dimension Dash is just not a Spriggan part at all. It's just not. Blitz and Dimension Dash, they just are not Spriggan parts. I don't like either one of these in the slightest. I don't think either one is good for Spriggan. Like a Valkyrie disc and then an Achilles driver, no. So as far as how to fix this goes, I'm actually going to come up with a brand new disc for this thing. I feel like Spriggan should have had a new disc, so I'm going to be calling it Verge. Verge would be an extremely round disc, almost like a round in a sense, not like the exact same, but just kind of very round, like this disc is. It would have translucent red plastic, kind of like this. However, the outer part of the disc, the outermost plastic, piece that's very round, would be coated with white rubber. So you'd have some rubber on the disc, and I think that'd work well as a GT Spriggan disc. For a driver, this is definitely kind of a less important base. I'm not going to go crazy with the driver. It's just reusing Zeta Dash, although I would probably prefer the original colored Zeta from Spriggan Requiem in this case, but, this works fine enough. So just kind of as a quick concept to how something like this would look. It'd be something like this, which, yeah, I mean, obviously around isn't quite there, and would probably need to be a little bit darker red. This would be a darker red, but I think that the base idea would be something like this, and of course you have the white on the outside, but still. I just think it's kind of a very vague idea. This looks pretty good, and just hopefully as a concept, a new disc with a Zeta Dash opposed to Dimension Dash just feels a little bit more sensible for a GT Spriggan. I personally feel like it's a lot better overall. Next up, we have Union Achilles. So, Union Achilles, like a lot of the bays I've just said, isn't my favorite Achilles, but they were clearly trying to experiment with this. They brought back the kind of driver gimmick of Extend Plus. They tried a new idea for a disc with Convert, and this is where we first get the sort of attachment idea with Union. My main problem isn't with any of this stuff. I mean, this bay was clearly just kind of experimental to see where Achilles was kind of going and what direction they wanted to take it. My problem's actually with the weight. I don't like Rets as the Achilles weight. It just doesn't feel right to me, so going to swap it out with something that is a reused part, but I just think personally, for Achilles, it just makes way more sense. And that's Zan. I think Zan is just a much better weight, personally. Like, it's a pretty neutral weight, but I think for kind of a two-sided bay, I just think this works much, much better for Achilles. Even just looks better, in my opinion. Like, well, yeah, just, there you go. I just think this makes way more sense for Achilles. Union Achilles, Convert, Extend Plus, Zan. There you go. Very, very simple change. I know, it's not really that crazy, but I think this just helps it out a lot, in my opinion. Alright, we got Big Bang Genesis next up. So this is a weird one because in my last video with Dead Phoenix, I said how it should have the stock combo, but here's the thing. I understand why they would not do that here, because that would require it using Hybrid. Hybrid would jack the price up on this thing by like double. So I kinda get why they don't do that. So I'm fine with having weird parts here. I think 0 yard metal is fine. You get a new driver variant out of it, but I said it was done last video, but there is one last thing to do here. One final issue to solve with this thing. A frame, yes. I swear this is the last time I'm doing this, but just give it a frame. I'm going to be at Glaive in this kind of opaque silver color, because we don't really get these much, and these kind of work with any disc, so, or like any color scheme really, so I'm just going to give it that. So I think it's kind of cool to see something like this every now and again. And we don't really get that much in normal releases, like ever, so I just figured it was probably a good time to throw one on, because why not? And there you go. Big Bang Genesis 0 Glaive Yard Metal. It has a frame, everyone. I swear this is the last time I'm doing this with the frames. The last 2 episodes had a ton of that, so last time. And also, that's pretty much it. Like, I don't have any other things to alter for, like, fixes. I don't have anything else. This is a very quick one to fix, but also there's not a lot of proper GT bays. That's not saying much either, plus the frame issue isn't a thing anymore, except for this thing. So we're really able to just kind of, like, blitz through everything here and get through pretty quickly. But now we have the next part of the video, which is, of course, kind of the layer stuff, so yeah. Alright, now we have the layer stuff. To give them actual stock combos, the first one, of course, being Poison Hydra. I'm going to keep the Zan weight on this thing as well. I think that's perfectly fine for Poison Hydra. So, we're keeping that. However, we do have to give it a disc and driver. For a disc, I'm thinking I'm going to give it Verge. Verge was the disc I just gave Lord Spriggan, so I think, yeah, this is fine, and I am using a round as an example here. This isn't the exact color I'd go for. I'd go for more of like a magenta-ish color like the rubber on Poison Hydra, or even a little bit more of a pink like Hydra has here. But this will have to suffice for the video. As far as the driver goes, I'm actually going to use Bite Dash, and there is no Bite Dash, but, you know, I'm just kind of using this as an example. Again, color's wrong here. This is, I guess it's a little bit closer than the Balder one, which is why I chose this one, but I'd make this like a translucent light blue, again, to kind of match up with Poison Hydra. And then the rubber would be a kind of magenta-ish, pinkish color, so quite a bit different than what's here, but this is the closest I could really get, so I just personally think this would be a pretty nice Poison Hydra combo. I think a kind of disc with some rubber on it works very well for Poison Hydra, just based on kind of the gimmick here. And also, Bite, I don't know, Bite just feels like a good Hydra driver to me. And yeah, Bite Dash, because I feel like that makes sense. So, yeah, the overall combo would be Poison Hydra, Verge, Bite Dash, Zan. And this doesn't look quite right, but just kind of as an idea, thinking of this bay and how it would work. Yeah, I kind of like this, honestly. Color matching would be great, but unfortunately I am a bit limited in what I could do with that, so that's just the idea, though. So Poison Hydra, I think, would end up very cool if it got a proper slot combo, and this is the one that I would have done, because again, this is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated bays of all time. Not really in performance, it's just really cool, and it just sucks that they never did anything with it, which, yeah, it really just sucks, honestly. Now we have the other layer, this being, of course, Knockout Odin, and yes, I would also keep the blue Genweight in there. I think it works fine for Knockout Odin. So for a combo, I'm actually going to go a little bit weird here with just kind of the overall design, but we're going to pick Drake. Drake is definitely a strange choice, I feel like, but I don't know, I just kind of think it works with Odin. As far as color goes, this is pretty accurate. I may make this a little bit more blue, but it's not like that bad. As far as the driver goes, Extreme Dash. Obelisk Odin had Extreme. Extreme Dash just makes sense. I definitely keep this color the same. You could maybe swap out the clear rubber for something else. I don't know, maybe blue or even yellow if you want to, but honestly I kind of like the clear, so in my mind I'm keeping it clear. So putting this thing together, it would look something like, well, if I can get it together, which I feel like I always struggle to get this specific this layer on any combo. I don't know what it is about my Knockout Odin, but there we go. So yeah, you can kind of see that there would be some parts here, the metal underneath there. No, I feel like it just lines up pretty decently. And yeah, Extreme Dash works very well for something like Odin. And again, this in my opinion is a very underrated bay, and I feel like it would have been much better. I feel like a lot of people would have liked to see a proper Odin comeback instead of just a weird layer that was really hard to get unnecessarily with how they did Random Collection 3. But yeah, I think giving it an actual combo, in my opinion, Drake Extreme Dash works very well for it, so Knockout Odin, Drake Extreme Dash, again, is my combo of choice for this thing. And I think it looks very cool overall, and again, would have just liked to see this, and Odin is one of my favorite motifs, so again, just would have been great to see, but, well, all I could do is make a concept for it, right? Alright, so now we have the kind of weird prize bays. So these are going to be an experience. All of these should have been either evolutions or new motifs, so we're going to start with the first one here, Cosmo Valkyrie. This bay is an absolute mess. So first up, I would just make Cosmo have stamina wings. I think you could do 4 of them, honestly, which would be a lot, but again, I think you could do it just kind of based on the design with how these look, make these into stamina wings. You would probably guess where I'm going with that, because the actual chip should have been Ragnarok. I would pretty much turn this thing on its side and kind of make a GT version of the sparking chip from Glide Ragnarok, so yeah. But that's kind of what I do with that. As far as the weight goes, I would swap it out for 10. And I'm going to make a sort of pseudo combo here. I'm going to have to use the Valkyrie chip still, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Anyway, So after that, we have a disc. The disc, I'd make translucent yellow for the plastic. Other than that, it's just normal metal. But the gimmick would be stamina wings. I would basically base them on Cyclone Ragnaroks, where there is a little bit more movement on them, rather than just kind of being locked in one spot, like some of the older stamina wings, which would be also on Cosmo, the older version, but the sort of ones that go outward more would be for the disc. The disc would actually be called Duct. So that's that. As far as the driver goes, we're going to use a low, also kind of in a similar color scheme, maybe a little bit lighter on this, but still pretty similar. You can maybe do orange for low if you want to. I'm personally going to stick to yellow, but that's just me. So with that, we're going to go ahead and swap out 11 and Eternal here. Also, we're going to take out 10. And, okay, there we go. And I'm going to use Convert just for the color scheme. It's not going to look like Convert, but again, I am a little bit limited in terms of what I can do here. But basically, this would sort of be the general idea of what I would be doing for this sort of Ragnarok in GT. So, as you can see, this is sort of like a mock-up for my idea of Cosmo Ragnarok Duct Low Sen. And I just think this looks actually really cool underneath it. I really like how all the yellow looks, actually. It looks really cool. You'd have a little bit of metal underneath, even with a new duct disc, so with kind of how low looks, I just think that this looks really, really cool. Also, again, you have this on its side, so look more like this with the new chip design, but yeah, Cosmo Ragnarok. Why was this not a Ragnarok? I genuinely don't know, and I decided to give it its own disc because I think that just would make sense, and low just definitely seems like a Ragnarok type of driver, and I think Sen over 10 would make sense for a weight, so there you go. I'm going to be retooling Cosmo Valkyrie into the GT version of a Ragnarok, because it just honestly makes the most sense to me. Alright, so we go from one of the most complicated to one of the simplest. Flare Dragon. Flare Dragon is mostly fine. I would actually keep this entire stock combo the same. Everything, except for one simple change. The Dragon chip, throw that away, give us a Zeus chip. I'd base it on Galaxy Zeus. I'd maybe give a bit more of a face to what we kind of already had on the edges here. Kind of on the bottom part of a chip, and it would be vertical, by the way, not horizontal. And then up here, you can maybe give some, like, lightning designs. I think that'd be pretty cool. As far as the color scheme goes, I'd actually opt to keep around the same color, but for planet, it would be yellow. You'd have the red around, and then the layer would largely be black. You'd have some gold detailing, and maybe a little bit of blue here and there, but yeah, Flare Zeus around planet Sen is the combo I would go for. And yeah, it's a very basic one. I don't know why this wasn't a Zeus. Like, it's literally everything about this. Around, planet. I mean, these are Zeus part. Like, well, around wasn't. Planet was the Zeus part, actually, but around, it very much feels like a modern, well, more modern Zeus disc. Flare feels like a Zeus base. Sen works fine. Literally, they could have just made this different, like different colors and just made a new chip design. Not even that complicated. They easily could have made a Zeus evolution here, but instead they didn't, and we just never got another Zeus. So again, Flare Zeus, I think this is the most basic of basic things I could do, and it's really dumb that they just didn't do this from the start. Okay, now we have a bit of a weird one. Tact Longinus. So what do you do with Tact Longinus? There's a lot of ways you can go about this, honestly, but for me, we're going to have to recolor this thing, but also the chip. Kerbeus. And you will have to not only recolor this, but you'd also have to flip it around. It'd have to be right spin, so this would have to kind of be the mirrored version of it, so it'd be a little bit weird, and this is definitely getting a little bit abstract, but yes, you'd have to flip this around to make it work with right spin bays. As far as the chip design goes, for a GT Kerbeus, I just turned horizontal, but also it'd be very much like Chain Kerbeus. You'd have the two dragon heads here, with the one bigger one on the other side, so that's kind of how I do that. As far as the color scheme goes, I'm honestly fine leaving this thing just being mostly green. Probably would not be translucent, mostly be kind of an opaque green. Very similar to this kind of color that Kerbeus has on chain. The underneath, I'd probably make translucent green, like a translucent dark green, and then these actual pieces here, I would make them black. So, yeah, the tact pieces. And of course I am basing this off of chain Kerbeus since it literally had the tact gimmick, so I think this makes the most sense. The weight being so, I am fine with, so we're going to keep so as the weight. However, for parts, this is not a balance type, this is now a defense type, which honestly is fine. This very much could pass for a defense type in my opinion. So, we're going to get rid of these parts, and for a disc, I'm going to pick Sting. Sting actually has a very limited-like shape, which of course is on Kaiser Kerbeus, so that's why I'm choosing it. I would make this actually magenta, the plastic here. So, kind of a translucent magenta. I think that'd be really cool. Driver, keep dash. Keep dash, I think this would just be great, and I'd make this maybe a bit of a different green, maybe slightly, just slightly lighter, and then the rubber would be probably magenta, which would be nice, and yeah, this is not color matched at all, like not even close, obviously. But my idea would be Tact Kerbeus, Sting, keep dash, so. And just kind of, again, to give an idea of how this would look. Like, it looks something like this, you know. And I think this is actually a pretty nice combo. It worked well as a defense type. And again, works well for a GT Kerbeus. There's a lot to do here. Again, you have to do really just a full recolor of everything. Like, this isn't even close. And also, again, you have to swap around the spin direction here for tact. So, yeah, a little bit awkward, but again, GT Kerbeus. I think Kerbeus and Ragnarok should have appeared in every single season, being 2 of the original 4, so yeah, and again, with how chain Kerbeus ended up, I think tact works very well for a Kerbeus as long as it's the correct spin direction, so there you go, my GT Kerbeus concept. Alright, now we have another one that is very simple. That is, of course, Naked Spriggan, but even though it's going to be a pretty simple change, this is probably the most strange one of the bunch, with what I'm going to be doing here. So, first up, you will have to make this right spin. So, yet again, I would say both Naked and Paradox would have to be swapped to being right spin oriented instead of left spin oriented. Outside of that, though, it's really just down to kind of the color scheme and the new chip. So, what chip would I do? Uranus. So it'd be pretty much a GT version of this chip right here. And you basically have to color match it. This would be a lot of white and gold. I would make the driver translucent white. This would be kind of just translucent white. The disc, this would just be a solid white naked, with the gold still being there, and then you'd have white and gold on the chip. I'd keep the weight as 10. However, one thing I would do, I'd actually rename the naked base, because that just sucks as a name. I would rename it to Origin. So, the full combo of the bay would be Origin, Uranus, Paradox, Orbit, Metal 10. So, this might not make sense. Why am I doing a Uranus pre-evolution? Well, I just feel like it kind of would be cool to see something like Uranus, which was sort of the precursor to Sparking in a sense, have a GT version. We'd see kind of where it initially started from, again in GT. Then we would get first Uranus, sort of the prototype Sparking bay, which could then lead into things like, of course, Lucifer. So just having a proper precursor in GT I think would have been a really cool idea. I don't know if they would introduce the character, but it would just be nice to see, and when you see kind of a Uranus evolution of sorts, even though it's not that crazy, just seeing Uranus come back in Sparking, what it does, and then seeing how that relates to Lucifer, I just think that'd be a really cool tie-in to something like this, and it just show that they had kind of a plan from much earlier on, even though this was only released a few months before Sparking, but still, I just think it'd be a really, really cool tie-in, which is why I opted to make Naked Spriggan into Origin Uranus, and the part selection's perfectly fine here. I think Paradox is really cool, Orbit Metal's nice, so outside of the chip and recolor, it's just kind of making these work for right spin things properly, so that's really all there is to it, and yeah. So this pretty much concludes the sort of prize base section of the video. All 4 of them are very strange, and in my opinion, they had really, really simple ways to fix them. I think the most notable being Zeus. How did they miss that? Why did they not do it? Ragnarok and Kerbeus are a little bit more abstract in a sense, but again, I think they would work perfectly fine. And then Uranus, okay, this is a stretch, and it's definitely just my own creation here, but I think it'd be very cool. And it's just something that would work really well here, I think. So yeah, and now we get into kind of the original stuff. And now we get on to my own creations, or in this video, really just one creation. GT was a very strange season with really not many reused motifs, so with all the fixes I've done to the prize bays, there's only one other bay that I want to actually make, and that is a new Excalibur. So the actual name of this bay is going to be called Quantum Excalibur Thorn Sword Dash Ichi. So basically, Quantum Excalibur, how am I going to make this? So basically, it would definitely have a very similar design to Buster Excalibur. And this would actually work as a chip. Look at something like Prime Apocalypse, which kind of has the same chip design built in here. So it's definitely doable. You'd have maybe a little bit of centerpiece here for kind of the weight, which I'll get to in a moment, because it's going to have a little bit of special design on it. But yeah, you basically have kind of an extra slot here for the weight, obviously, in the middle. But the base design would kind of have like a hilt up here. You have a little bit of a design up here. And the sword would eventually come downward, like it does here. And there would be some metal underneath. Maybe even have a little bit of metal going above as well. But yeah, I think having some metal on the sword and kind of keeping a similar design to Buster Excalibur in a sense would be nice. Although for the Quantum base, which by the way, I think that name kind of works pretty well with something like Excalibur being a strong attack type. But anyway, the base itself would also have a little bit of metal on the edge of the sword. Not a contact point, but just kind of behind the contact point. I think that'd work very well for Excalibur. So yeah, I just think it'd work well as an attack type, and also just a kind of GT Excalibur. You'd have to kind of compromise a little bit with kind of the design, how the system is, but again, having the metal on the chip, and a little bit of metal on the base, I think would be pretty nice. As far as the weight goes, I guess just showing something like Sen here, you'd have basically only 2 studs, and there'd also only be kind of 2 parts going outward. There wouldn't be anything up here. It would just be these 2 pieces and 2 kind of metal pieces going to them. They'd be very dense, even more dense than something like Goku, so it'd be maybe a lighter weight, but it would still be comparable to other weights, but all that weight is just shifted down towards the metal part of the blade. So this would be pretty unbalanced, but I think that'd be kind of cool. So that's what I would do for the weight Ichi. But also, I forgot to mention, there should be a little bit of special design on the weight here. And that's in the center. There would actually be a little X. So there'd be kind of an X. Of course, referring to something like Excalibur, which generally has some kind of X in the center, like this one does. Just a nice little reference. So that's what I would do with that. Thorn would be a solid just... Well, I mean, you have the metal, but the plastic would just be a opaque gold. I just think that would work. Most comparable thing here is Convert. I would probably have these sort of, protrusions be much smaller, if not just rounded. And then this bottom one, which would be kind of to line up with the sword, would be a little bit longer. You'd also have kind of more metal, which would also connect to the main part of the disc here. So there'd be a lot more metal. And again, just be kind of shifting the weight towards the sword. As far as the driver goes, just do Sword Dash. I think that's fine with kind of an unbalanced Excalibur. So Sword Dash for the driver. I think that's fair enough. And there you go. That is my Excalibur concept. Quantum Excalibur, Thorn, Sword Dash, Ichi. I think this would be a pretty nice Excalibur. I think it would work well as a GT Excalibur. I think Sword Dash is fine here. With the unbalanced nature of the bay, I think it works okay enough. And then also, yeah, everything just really pairs up to make this really oriented on the sword, which I think is kind of cool. And it would give us a GT Excalibur, since this thing was, I feel like this thing just robbed us of that in a way, so... You have this as well as a GT Excalibur, which would just be very, very cool and nice to see, so... yeah, Excalibur is something else I think that should have probably just been in every season, so we are fixing that here. So, yeah. So, that's everything. That is the entire GT reimagining video. This actually ended up being a lot shorter than I thought. I don't know how long this video is yet, but I'm not even sure if it breaks a half hour, which is surprising. I thought this was going to be longer, but I guess there wasn't as much to do here as I thought. A lot of things were kind of simple changes, and there were a lot of things that I think went further in depth, which is nice, because I feel like I haven't got a chance to do that as much yet, so I at least got to do some more fixes here. Definitely a lot of reused parts, though, which I didn't intend for, but I just felt like a lot of things worked nicely. But I think that's definitely a little bit less in Sparking and DB, which, again, I do have some crazy ideas, especially just for gimmicks and stuff for these next two parts. So, with that, this is almost like, I feel like those were like the two things I really wanted to do, and these first four parts almost just felt like a prologue to what those two are going to be. I've been hyping them up for a while now, and I'm very excited that we've gotten through all four of these parts. Now we get to the really crazy stuff after this. I'm very, very excited about that, so that's fun. Well, it's going to be fun. Not to make, though, that's going to be a lot of time to make, but hopefully it ends up being very cool. But yeah. So overall, that was a GT episode. I hope it was pretty good. I definitely had some fun making this, especially with kind of the new ideas with like the prize base becoming actual evolutions / new motifs with like Uranus, but and also, you know, making a brand new Excalibur was pretty cool. And just being able to give actual combos to two bays that never got it, and just fixing up a few other things here and there, I think was pretty nice. Overall, I feel like this episode was probably the best of the bunch so far, since I actually got to make new stuff and wasn't just adding frames the entire time. So that was fun. But yeah, that's basically all I have for this video. There we go, I can't talk sometimes. And now, after this, we get on to the two crazy parts, which I've just been very excited to do. The sparking one is next, and I have a lot to talk about for that. So anyway, stay tuned for that. It'll be something else. Might be over an hour long, I'm not sure. But anyway, that's all for this video. So yeah, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.